Hey kids, howdy and welcome once again to Conscious Embodiment, Astrology and Dreams with Dr. Michael Lennox. I'm coming at you for June 17th through the 23rd. I'm here as I am every week with producer Zoe. Hey Zoe.
Hello. Hi listeners. Hi Michael.
Nice to be here today, and we start as we always do with a question. Love the question, kids. Keep them coming. Katie writes, hello. This past week's podcast, and actually it's probably a week or two ago, you mentioned Jupiter's return in tangent with a Saturn return in a personal chart. I hadn't thought about what a Jupiter return might mean or signify before, but my Jupiter return just happened this year, and she says where, and what a year it has been, both positive and negative. Can you talk a little bit about the significance and meaning of a Jupiter return? Thank you. Love your content and keeping up with you on Instagram as well as the podcast. Thank you, Katie. And yes, the Jupiter return, we don't talk about it a lot, partly because it's not as brutal and significant as the Saturn return, right? The Saturn return is epic. We only get 2 of them, 3 of them if you live to later than 90. And because Saturn is all about lessons and restrictions and the karmic contract, there's a very big deal every Saturn return. The other return that everybody knows about that's also significant is your solar return, right? So in both of these, you're in consideration of what the planet's meaning is. It gets amplified, right? So if Saturn is returning, your lessons and your karmic contract gets amplified, so you're going to be in great lesson learning. Every year, your sense of self gets amplified and everybody gathers around you to celebrate you. That's your solar return, otherwise known as your birthday. So I'm just sharing those 2 examples so that you'll understand a little more thoroughly what I mean when I say when Jupiter returns every 12 years, we're each in a kind of consideration of what I like to sometimes jokingly refer to as the factory installed settings for abundance and prosperity. And what I mean by factory installed, I mean what you were born with purely at birth. We were all born in a kind of sense that this is a consciousness of abundance and expansion, and all good can come to you if you learn how to create it by working with the universe. Each placement of Jupiter in the land of astrology will tell the native, the person whose chart you're looking at, what the style of abundance will be, how you manifest, based on the archetype of the sign that it's in, and if you know your chart, the house placement. So the one thing that's happening in every Jupiter return is coming back to this pre-installed sense of something that's part of our humanness by birth, but something that most of us have to relearn. We come in with abundance as our birthright, and we're sort of told, you're too small, you're too wounded, you're too fearful, it's too much doubt, you can't have that, like life sucks, it's hard, right? All of those messages squeeze us so that when we come to our Jupiter return, we can lean in to abundance as this sort of birthright thing. It's also the beginning of a 12-year cycle. Takes 12 years for Jupiter to move around the ecliptic. That means he spends 1 year in every sign. So when any planet returns, we are in the same kind of consciousness as the new moon, right? A conjunction is just like the sun and the moon coming together at the same place. Like as an example, I sometimes refer to the 60s when Uranus, fast change, and Pluto, slow change, were at the exact same place, like the seeds planted of fast change, slow change that started in the 60s. So each of those kinds of conjunctions or start agains, whether it's a new moon or in this case, Jupiter return, sets up 4 pillars that are the same as the 4 pillars of the lunar cycle. So in year 1, during the Jupiter return, it's like a new moon in the world of abundance. You're ready to start again with manifesting that your desires might be, and you're in good working order to do it. 3 years later, you're in the first quarter of your Jupiter to Jupiter relationship. Jupiter will now be squaring your natal Jupiter, and there might be challenges in that 3-year period of just the flow of abundance as you're learning what you really want and what you really don't want, because that's the nature of the quarter crisis. The first quarter crisis is some things will fail, some will thrive. So 3 years after your Jupiter return, remember it's Jupiter, it's all about expansion and growth, right? But there is a turning point at the first quarter, 3 years after the return. 3 years later, you're at the Jupiter opposed Jupiter. Things get a little bigger and more over the top with an opposition. We sort of get to have an expansion sensibility where we also might have to watch out for, being too much, going too big, having a little bit of an over reaction to, what you're creating. And then 3 years after that, you come to the third quarter wrap up where you're going to be tested on the wisdom you've gained in the last, 9 years. And then we come to a Jupiter return again, 12 years after the last Jupiter return. Another thing to sort of consider from the Jupiter return moment is to clock Jupiter moving through all of the houses in your chart over those 12 years. And you can think of the Jupiter return as kind of the alpha omega starting up of the new cycle. And then you just watch as Jupiter moves from house to house over the 12 years that pass between one Jupiter return to the next to understand what area of your life is going to receive the most expansion and abundance. And while we're always expanding and creating in all areas of life, if we clock the Jupiter return as a kind of purity of our ability to manifest our desires, then we can watch Jupiter as he moves through each house subsequently over the 12 years that follow and really focus our manifestation mojo in the direction of that house's consciousness.
I love that viewpoint of following where Jupiter is to see where you're abundant this year. It just feels like a really positive way of looking at astrology rather than, oh my God, I have a Jupiter return. What does it mean? Da, 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 da.
Yeah.
No, it's like, hey, where am I abundant this year? I really like that.
Yeah, perfect. Me too. So if you remember from last week's Kids, we talked a lot about Mercury and Venus coming together at the last degree of Gemini and together over the weekend moving into Cancer. So we're going to start there again because they're about to do something this week that is going to make today and tomorrow and Wednesday probably as well a little bit interesting. So let's start with the idea that mind and heart are in a beautiful sense of congruency because Mercury and Venus just met up and they've been hanging around for a little while together. And by virtue of them both moving into Cancer together over the weekend, we start this week off with our mind and our heart in congruency, but in a place where we're considering what's the care that we need? What's the preparation that we need? What do we need to do at home, Cancer, in order to move out more powerfully into the world? So we're about to go through in July the new moon in Cancer and the full moon in Capricorn, which is all about this idea of in Cancer we prepare, and it's the opposite sign, Capricorn, we climb the mountain of our goals. So if we're about to go through a lunar cycle just up ahead, that's all about that home-public dichotomy. It's really interesting that as we lean into that, we have this moment right before our next full moon of this lunar cycle, which is going to be then preparatory for the next one, we have this beautiful opportunity where mind and heart in Cancer, focused on what we need in a very private way, are both going to pass through my favorite geometry in astrology, the 150-degree inconjunct or quincunx that I call the Great Eliminator Angle. So not only is the next lunar cycle a new moon in Cancer and a full moon in Capricorn, we actually have a first full moon in Capricorn this week, then a new moon in Cancer, and then what in my definition would be like a blue moon, because it's 2 full moons in the same sign in a month. I'll talk much more about this next month when we're in the second one. But I want to make sure that as I'm talking about what Venus and Mercury are doing, I make it really clear that we're about to go through 2 major full moons where our conscious awareness is on care and preparation and restoration and what's needed behind the scenes in order to release that which would inhibit us from climbing the mountain of our goals and ambitions and desires. So we have that, this Friday and next month both. So what Venus and Mercury are doing by moving into Cancer yesterday and Saturday and moving through this great eliminator angle with the planet that can kill off and have reborn any consciousness that we need to be free of. Take a look around your world these days. Over the weekend, today, tomorrow, Wednesday, there might be releases and things that you let go of. And this isn't exactly a moment of ending. So it's not like, oh my God, your relationships are all ending. That's not at all what's happening. And this is not huge. This is subtle astrology. And the fact that these two, angles, are an inconjunct from Mercury to Pluto and an inconjunct from Venus to Pluto tomorrow, this is minor geometry in astrology. Some astrologers would not even be talking about this. But I talk about this because I use astrology and teach astrology from the inside out. I don't say, ooh, here's what the new moon's going to bring you. I say, here's what you can set intentions for inside. That's how I use astrology, from the inside out. So there is an opportunity as we move through the beginning of this week to be examining what it is we need at the level of self-care, how well or not well we are giving that to us. Look around our home environment, our family environment, our intimate relationship environment, and ask yourself, does something need to be let go of? Is something actually being taken away from you right now and you're grabbing on for dear life? Let it go. We're in epic release with 2 full moons in Capricorn from the perspective of conscious awareness of Cancer, right? So we are really wanting to examine how we relate to caring for self and keeping our mind and our hearts in alignment on what we need so that we can leave the house and get some things done in a powerful way. So be paying attention to loss and shift and change these first few days of the week. The big news of the week is that we are coming up to our summer solstice in the north, winter solstice in the south. That's on the 20th, which is Thursday. But I'll say this. The sun moves into Cancer on Thursday, somewhere around 2:40, 2:45 in the afternoon, p.m. And so in some ways, the solstice for me is often the day we wake up into a world where the sun is in Cancer, not the day that it changes signs. 4 o'clock in the afternoon is almost the end of my day. I go to bed at 8 o'clock, right? So I wake up on that Thursday into a Gemini sun day. And yes, the sun changes signs in the afternoon. I will probably be doing my ritual on Friday, not Thursday. But Thursday is as much the solstice as Friday. I'm nitpicking here. And so we just honor the solstices in the way that the pagans did. We mark the moments that show the movement of our year. Back in farming days when hunting and gathering gave way to agriculture, we needed the solstices and the equinoxes because they marked the seasons. They told us when to plant, when to harvest, when to lay fallow. And the reason I honor the new moons and the full moons and the solstices is because, I use the word God all the time, but my use of that word God is way better described by quantum physicists and atheists than the people who originally used the word God, people of religion. So my experience of remembering my connection to the universe itself and the existence that birthed me is connected to the earth herself, right? That we exist because of this dynamic experience of the wet earth and the dry, hot, bright sun coming together, creating the transcendent third that is us, that the earth birthed us, and we, all of us, the collective, not all the humans, but all of the beings that make up life are one organism. So I honor the solstice like the pagans, and I invite others to do the same. And the why of it is that I want to feel deeply connected to existence itself. That is part of why I have a spiritual practice in the first place. Existence itself is because there is a burning star up there that gives us warmth and light, and there is this wetness down here that allows, birthing to occur. When they come together, the two polar opposites of the Father God of the Sun and the Mother God of the Earth come together, they create us, the transcendent third, life itself. And so when we honor the moments with a relationship between the feminine of the earth and the masculine of the sun moves through these four pillars of crucial moments, we honor that. So it's funny. I think the sun doesn't move in a lunar cycle posture, but there are four pillars of the solar cycle, just like there are four pillars of the lunar cycle and four pillars of the Jupiter cycle, right? That is part of how we, in consciousness, make sense of this world. We create patterns. And the most ubiquitous symbol that exists in all sorts of cultures around the world, irrespective of geography and time. Our friend Dr. Carl Jung figured this out because he saw this symbol all over the world, the circle with an X in it. It's a round circle with a cross. That's a fundamental symbol you see all over the planet because we are that. The earth is a circle. There is a cross. It's the never-ending North and South Pole and the sort of infinite sense of Eastern and Western horizon. That's kind of an illusion, but we have these four pillars right here at the earth. And then we match up with those pillars in the movement of equinox, solstice, equinox, solstice. So here we are at the longest light in the north, so we want to celebrate that. I think we should be celebrating the dark and the shadow in the summer solstice, because in the winter we think about the light. In the winter when it's dark, we light a candle, we decorate a tree. We're honoring the light when it's darkest, and when it's lightest, we just play. We think of the solstice in the summer as like go to the beach and have some fun, but I don't do it that way. I celebrate the light, but there'll always be like a black candle lit somewhere in that process to say, but there's also dark. I also like to think about it this way. It's the longest day and the most light in the Northern Hemisphere, but the exact same moment, it's the shortest day and the longest night down under. Right. That becomes the contextualized tension of opposites as well, where in the equinoxes, wholeness is easy to grok because days and nights are of equal length north and south. So at this moment, we have to stretch the boundaries of how we're thinking of the collective so that we, at some point on Thursday or Friday, honor the notion that we are in the most light. And isn't that magnificent? But we do not forget the bottom of the wheel, the presence of shadow, or the capacity to know that at some point we have to die again in order to be reborn to enjoy all this light. So technically, a blue moon would be having 2 full moons in a single calendar month. I just fucking hate that. I can't begin to tell you how much I hate that, because we have another thing that happens that's happening right now that we don't have a word for that I think is more juicy. We have 2 full moons in Capricorn in a row. We have a full moon in Capricorn on Friday at 1 degree of Capricorn, and next month we have another full moon in Capricorn at the 30th degree. So 2 full moons in a row in the same archetype, I think, are like a double opportunity to release and transform in the same area of consciousness. We don't have a word for that unless it happens in a calendar month, which is only 400 years old, and it's that stupid Georgian calendar that we have to cram leap year into just to have it make sense. Right, so I call this a blue moon. I mean, not really, but I do. Or rather, let me say it this way. I can't change the demarcation of what a blue moon is, but I can tell you that I don't think it matters if you have 2 full moons in a calendar month in a row, but man, I think it matters when you have 2 full moons in the same sign. Think about it. If you have a standard chart and there's only one house in your chart ruled by Capricorn, that house, that area of your consciousness is getting 2 hits in a row to release the consciousness of that house so that its opposite house can have its sort of, way with us, the Cancer house. Part of what's juicy about this first one is that Venus and Mercury are still close enough together to be not only keeping mind and heart in congruency, but because they're both in Cancer and close enough to the sun, they're creating a little stellium. It's sun's at 1 degree, Venus at 5, Mercury at 9. So they are gathered together. So if the sun says our conscious awareness is thinking about care and family and home and what's needed in a restful sort of way, this lunation is saying that our mind and our heart are in agreement with that. So that as our minds are thinking about the care that we need and our hearts are vibing with feeling a great desire and need for rest and care and restoration and preparation, and the sun is shining the light of consciousness itself on all of that, then the moon across the way says, what do we have to let go of in order to climb the mountain of our ambitions more thoroughly, more powerfully? In a gratitude perspective, we might want to, because, all full moons are about gratitude and release. I tend to focus on the release part because I figure the gratitude part doesn't really need my help. That's right. Mm-hmm. But it's not a bad idea in every full moon to look at what have you created that's magnificent? What goals have you achieved? What mountains have you climbed? So that you're putting some effort in the full moon that vibes with the yummy sense that we've grown something, we've harvested something. We also leave shit behind in a full moon. And again, I speak more into that because I use full moons for process. And again, even in my world, in my life, my expansion and my magnificence doesn't need any help. It's moving in the direction of where there are limits or fears or restrictions that need our attention. And so in this full moon, we're doing that in the realm of care that we need and what has to be released in order to be more successful outside in the world. Makes this a full moon all about what you need at home in order to be more effective outside of home. Pluto and the sun are holding the same inconjunct that Mercury and Venus moved through at the beginning of the week. That's elegant to me, that if the full moon is like this huzzah moment of release and transformation, and Pluto is down there winking at the sun in the eliminator angle, then the lunation itself has a kind of psychic surgery capacity to go into the underbelly, or into the underworld, I should say, to go into the underworld, find the hidden thing that we've got to let go of and release and have a little death. So Mercury prepared us on Monday. Venus sort of deepened our readiness to let something go that's deep in the heart on Tuesday. And here we are on Friday, and the lunation has the sun and Pluto exactly in this elimination angle. And that puts a deep release capacity into the full moon. Some things are going to be let go of as we move through Friday. I love this too. You've got Mars in Taurus right now. Mars in Taurus means he's getting his disposition from Venus. So Mars, reflector of action and the body and goals. You're right. Mars and a Capricorn full moon relate to each other in some ways because, if Capricorn is the goal and the ambition, Mars is the legs that climb us up that mountain. So Mars in Taurus, getting disposition from Venus, is sextiling the Cancer folk. So that means that all of the personal planets are connected to each other in a powerful way, making the kind of psychic surgery of the full moon all the more personal to each of us as individuals, because the personal planets are dialing directly into the lunation itself. So it's like our conscious awareness is on the surgeon's table, our heart centers are on the surgeon's table, our thought processes are on the surgeon's table, and so is our actions and our goals and our ambitions. There's still a loose trine being held between Jupiter and Pluto. So that tells us, that's like the promise. Like Jupiter says you can have it all, and you can have it delivered. Pluto in a trine with Jupiter says, yeah, that's probably true, but you might have to go through some changes and some deaths and some rebirths in order to have everything that you say you desire. So I love that that's part of this full moon as well. It's kind of like strap yourself in and let the releases happen, because Jupiter and Pluto are promising if you let the release go to a really, really deep place, which requires some surrender and courage, the net result is bounty and Jupiter's blessing. One thing is that it's likely to be a deeply emotional couple of days. You've got lots of, energy in Cancer, which is always a little bit emotional. And there's also this powerful square between Neptune at the 30th degree of Pisces and the moon and the sun holding their opposition. It's interesting, too, because the moon and the sun are in Capricorn and Cancer, and the true cardinal square to that would be if Neptune was in Aries, because those are the cardinal signs. So if they were in a real square in the appropriate signs, you'd have moon in Capricorn squaring Neptune in Aries, squaring sun in Cancer. But Neptune's not in Aries yet. He'll do that next year. He's going to retrograde and stay in Pisces. So he's at the final 30th degree of Pisces right now. So what that means for us is that the landscape of the moment has our connection to spirit the best it can be. 30th degree is called anaretic. It's a degree of mastery. Neptune rules Pisces, so he's fully at home here. That means our spiritual connection and the way we guide a co-creation with spirit is turned on full tilt with Neptune at the 30th degree of Pisces. But the square, the 90-degree angle, makes for conflict between our conscious awareness and our co-creation with spirit and our unconscious experience and our co-creation with spirit. I almost don't know what to say about this. It's just sort of like, okay, we got this full moon that follows all of the sort of dictates that I've already outlined. Very simply put, conscious awareness in self-care, rest, restoration, unconscious focus on the goals and ambitions that we can be more powerful in if we make sure that we're caring for ourselves well. And if the whole thing of creating a life does start and end with a co-creation with spirit. Spirit is guiding this full moon capacity to help us release. But it ain't doing it with clarity, and it ain't doing it with specifics, and it's not giving us marching orders or instructions. It's all foggy, cloudy, emotional, and uncertain or unclear, because that's the shadow of Neptune. And the square geometry, which is hard geometry, will turn Neptune's fog machine on full blast as we move through the solstice and the full moon. Great for ceremony, I'm thinking. Like, I can't wait to do my ritual. But it might mean the couple of days of energy that we move through Thursday, Friday, and Saturday will be a little confusing or uncertain. And I just want you to take that into the idea that it's a full moon and things are being taken from you. This is one of those perfect moments where I can invite you, if you don't know what it is that you're releasing, use this prayer. I am now ready to release everything known and unknown, conscious and unconscious, that would inhibit my ability to climb the masterful mountains of my desires in life. I am ready to release at a deep level to be more powerful in the world. And so it is. Amen, amen, amen. It's one thing to remember that we create with our minds and we fill it with feeling and then manifestation occurs. But it's another thing to remember that the most of the experience is unconscious and mysterious, and we're just like shooting in the dark sometimes with our, little tiny puny thinking minds doing that thinking in the vat of the unconscious that is just enormous. And so take that into this full moon with you so that you're not coveting clarity and precision about what you're up to in this full moon, because it's really a moment to just lie down, surrender, and allow the changes to take place. Do that in a kind of a ritual way with the full moon, and your psyche will follow in a practical way in the land of behaviors. It's going to be an intense full moon probably, so enjoy and have at it.
Did you know that Michael has a daily astro alert? If you enjoy hearing the weekly astrology, you might like knowing more about each day. When you subscribe for the daily astro alerts, you'll get an in-depth explanation of the day's astrology sent right to your email. Subscriptions are only $10 a month, or you can purchase the yearly subscription at the reduced price of $100. To subscribe, head over to michaellennox.com. It's dream segment time. Every week, Dr. Michael will interpret dreams that are sent in via email or take a live caller. If you would like your dream interpreted on the podcast, you can go ahead and email us at dreams@michaellennox.com. Hopefully your dream will make it onto the show. Today we have a call-in dreamer. Hey B, what you dreaming?
Hey Zoe, hey Dr. Lennox, thank you so much for having me. So this dream happened quite recently, and candidly, as soon as I woke up, I wrote an email to you, Dr. Lennox.
Oh, I love that. Hey, B, call me Michael.
Okay, fantastic.
I like to be introduced as Dr. Michael Lennox, and I like to be addressed as Michael. It feels really weird when you call me Dr. Lennox, so please call me Michael. Yay.
Sounds good. Michael, so this dream happened pretty recently, and as soon as it happened, I right away emailed you because very candidly, I woke up with the biggest fear I've had in a really long time.
Yeah.
So during the dream, and for the last 3 years or so, I've been having a lot of dreams that relate to schools and colleges, things like that. So that's pretty regular. So I'm starting out and I'm kind of in a school situation. And out of the corner of my eye, I see this gigantic dog. And I want to say it was probably a mastiff, like the ones that look like essentially like a mini horse. And it had the cropped ears, so it had the little triangle ears. And it looked at me and right away started lunging towards me. And while I could tell it was doing it out of affection, he was wagging his tail. I was absolutely frightened. I ran away. I got myself kind of off of the dog and I ran away. And I was in a gym situation. And I want to say it was very kind of retro style gym where it was kind of that reddish limestone on the floor, greenish kind of lockers. And I ran into some people that I've known in my past. Things were fine in terms of how it ended. And their name was Amethyst. I don't know if that actually plays into if that plays into it.
We'll
And
see.
I let the other people know. I was like, there is a huge dog and it's coming after me. Please help. And everyone kind of joked it off and they laughed it off. And all of a sudden, I see this dog again. It found me. And the last thing I remember is I took a deep breath because I could see it was kind of going for my face and essentially kind of planted its face on my mouth. And I woke up gasping for air. And to give a little bit more context into why this dream was left me in such a state of fear is I mean, very candidly, I'm a cat person. I'm a cat mama. I love cats. I carry treats in my car just in case I run into a little cat. But when I was super young, I did get bit by a dog and I had to get rabies shots. So
got it. So
it was a
that was a bit of a traumatizing experience.
Yes. And, ever since then, I love dogs, the quieter ones, but I try to it's best to avoid them. And I don't know if this is true or just a myth, but dogs can definitely smell fear. Whenever I'm around and dogs see me, they kind of beeline for me. And I've had a lot of owners tell me, "Oh, my dog is not even very social." I'm surprised, but I kind of refrain. And I don't want to trauma dump on them.
Right.
But it's pretty bad. And to add insult to injury, I've seen a lot of videos of dog attacks on my For You page in the last couple of days.
Of course you do, because the algorithm on TikTok knows exactly where your shadow fear is, honey, and it's bringing them right to you, shoving them right in your face. Let me know a little bit about this friends from the past in the dream. You said that it ended, acceptably, but tell me who they were. Like, give me some data about that group.
Totally. So this was, we were friends when I was living in a different location. And I mean, we're both Geminis, so we can be kind of flaky, and it really just ended. Nothing really bad happened, but more of different locations, totally different parts of the world, a little bit hard to keep in touch. But when we saw each other, I still remember the feeling. It was just such a feeling of warmth where as soon as I saw her, I was like, oh, hi, it is so great to see you. And she felt the same way. But after that, I was a little bit more caught up in the fear of the dog rather than seeing the friend again.
Okay. The reason I ask is because if I start with the idea that both dogs and cats are symbols of unconditional love, our pets, we created the idea of pets. In some ways to express this love experience. It's true that a cat person likes cats and a dog person likes dogs, but I can't remove dog as unconditional love from my perception of this dream, even though you tell me I'm afraid of dogs. I got bitten and it was a real life trauma. Because it's still a dream where a dog, out of affection, is trying to come towards you. So if this were like a medicine dream, like if I were, which I think it is, right? But like if it were like a bear or an eagle, we'd be like, oh, it's an animal totem. But this is a medicine dream. There's a quality of unbridled, affectionate, big expression of love that you're afraid of. This is why I asked about the group from the past, because clearly whatever the first part of the dream is expressing, the big dog lunging at you, inspiring fear, the second scene of being connected to these friends from their past, it has to relate. Right? It can't not relate because your unconscious is telling us it relates. by showing us one scene and then bringing this part into the next scene. So then I asked for you to give us some more information, and it's fascinating that in there is things like warmth and affection, kind of like what dogs offer. Cats are cool. Dogs are warm.
Yeah.
So to me, it's still a dream about, first of all, it's a dream about being in school on some level, right? Your thematic, location of school in dreams does mean you're like in a period in your life where you're learning stuff. Otherwise, why a school? We learn in school. How does this land on you, honey? Because it's your dream. It ain't my dream. It has to land on you for it to be like a satisfying interpretation. What is it like for you to let go of dog as scary and embrace the idea that the dog might be representing something that you need more of in the direction of warmth and affection and effusive expression?
It definitely really resonates. And in my mind, I would have separated the fact that I saw an old good friend of mine, but now that you've kind of explained it, it really does make sense. And you're right in the sense of, I could feel the dog was lunging to me with affection.
With affection.
Yeah.
And it still was overwhelming. How I know the friends count in this way is because you ask them for help. So that means the dream psyche is saying there's a conflict. Now we know that I can't receive a certain kind of affection because it scares me. That group or those people or that Gemini woman somehow is a part of me that can help. So if you identify something about that friend group or that friendship as warm and affectionate, then that tells me, the receiver of the dream, the listener of the dream, that your solution is in the part of you that is warm, that is affectionate, that is, and Gemini is all about connecting. That's what the Gemini archetype invented. It's also planting on your face, right? The dog plants on your face. That's really interesting to me because then it is about expression, direct expression. We express everything with our face, including our voice is right there in the mouth.
I got goosebumps while you were saying that, actually.
Oh, well, that counts a lot. We love that. I even like this, that the first part of the dream shows you the conflict and the lesson because you're in school. And then the second part of the dream talks about what you got to work on. You're in a gym. You're looking in a gym to increase muscles, right? And so in this case, it's the muscles of expression, affection, being less afraid of over, what sometimes feels like overwhelming, How would, if we met in person, would I describe you as warm and effusive or sort of cool and cautious?
Everything you're saying makes a lot of sense. And to add a little bit more context, although I care a lot about people, but very candidly, I can be quite cold in the sense of I'll separate myself from relationships just because I find them it's why I've actually taken your classes in the past to kind of overcome that. But everything you're saying definitely makes a lot of sense. And
Okay.
I think it's a sign for me to maybe reconnect with those people and be a little bit more accepting of love and affection.
What I want to reflect back to you, first of all, thank you for that. That felt like a vulnerable share. And I want to remind you that in the dream, the dog is successful. He plants on your face, which means it's not something that needs to happen. It's something that is happening. You are, in fact, allowing yourself to receive more connection through allowing a greater comfort in places where you're a little uncomfortable. Now, we don't want you to push too fast into that. The Mastiff is probably too big. You need a puppy or right? But still, the dream says the process is well at hand and that the transformation is already taking place.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
Yay!
That really has made me feel so much better, and all the weight on my shoulders for the last little while of thinking about this dream over and over again. Thank you. Thank you
so
much.
glad.
Thank you, Zoe.
You're so welcome.
Thank you for listening to Conscious Embodiment, Astrology and Dreams with Dr. Michael Lennox. You can find us on Apple Music, the iHeartRadio app, and anywhere you find your favorite shows. Head on over to michaellennox.com for information on astrology readings, the Daily Astro Alert subscription, upcoming classes, and to join the mailing list.